Have you ever stumbled across a story online that hits you so hard it doesn't even feel like just some random post? Today I was scrolling through Reddit and found a few stories like that. Way too real, way too creepy to ignore. I've got a feeling you're going to want to hear these. So, no more waiting, let's dive right in.
Story 1.
Okay, so I've been an instructor in my university for a couple years now, while working towards a doctor in philosophy, a subject that requires, if not some semblance of sanity, at least a general grasp on reality. I've spent most of my life surrounded by books, papers, and students, so I like to think I've always been somewhat grounded. Until now. It started about 2 months ago. On a normal Tuesday, I walked into my classroom. Room 202, second floor of the building, same as always. I fixed the lights, logged into the computer, and prepared for my usual lecture. I have about 26 students in that class, and as usual, they all sat down, took out their notebooks, and started chatting before class was to begin. I never thought anything of it when I left at the end of the session. I packed my things, logged out of the computer, walked out of the classroom, and went home. Just another day. But the next morning, I came back to campus to find that something was off. When I reached the second floor, I immediately noticed something strange. Room 202 was gone. The hallway didn't look right. I checked the door numbers. Room 201, room 203, but there was no room 202. Thinking I just missed it, I retraced my steps. Maybe the doors had been rearranged for some reason. But as I walked through the building, I realized something even stranger. None of the other rooms seemed to be in the right place either. The layout of the hallway was different, the walls a little too close together, and the windows at odd angles. I even checked my phone to confirm that my class was always scheduled on the second floor, but when I turned the corner, there was no room 202. I panicked, of course. I thought I'd somehow lost my bearings, maybe had a momentary lapse in memory. So, I took a deep breath, walked upstairs to my office, and told my office mate what happened. She stared at me like I had lost my mind, understandably. Room 202? She asked. But you've been in that room all semester. I followed her to the second floor, where, sure enough, room 202 was right where it should have been. Everything was exactly as it always was. I tried to laugh it off. Maybe I was just tired. Maybe I'd walked through a different part of the building without realizing it. It was a mistake. One of those things that makes you wonder if you've been working too hard. No big deal. But then the same thing happened again the next week. And the week after that. Every time I left the classroom at the end of a session, when I returned the next day, the layout of the building would change. Room 202 would be gone, and I'd have to walk around the building, retracing my steps, trying to figure out where it had moved. Every single time, my office mate would walk me down the hallway to show me that room 202 was there, exactly where it was supposed to be. I'd stand there, dumbfounded, feeling the walls close and around me, wondering if I was going insane. And the worst part, the students noticed. One of them, a quiet girl, approached me after class one day. She's the kind of student who blends into the background, so I didn't think much of it at first when she asked if I was okay. "You've been acting different," she said, her voice quiet but sharp in my memory. "You seem distracted lately, and you keep looking at the walls like they're closing in on you." I remember laughing it off, telling her I was just tired, but her words stuck with me. Was I acting differently? Was I imagining things? The days after that became harder to bear. I began to notice small inconsistencies at first. Things that might be dismissed as simply a normal change or an overlooked detail. A poster on the wall that wasn't there before, a mounted whiteboard that had been moved. Sometimes all the desks in a room would be moved to face the back wall when they are normally positioned to face the projector screen. But then things began to escalate. One day, I entered the classroom and the walls themselves were all wrong. The doors were set in different places. The windows had changed. I felt an immediate sense of vertigo, like I just wasn't in the same room anymore. The layout was different, but the students were sitting in the same places as usual. They all looked confused, too. "Professor," one of them spoke up. This isn't where we were last time. Is this the wrong room?" I stood there, unable to speak. My throat was dry. I wanted to say something, but I couldn't form the words. Instead, I grabbed the door handle and stepped right back into the hallway, heart pounding. But when I turned back to look at the classroom, it was the same as always. Room 202. No mistakes. No oddities. Just another day. And yet, every time I left the room, the layout changed. I was sure of it. I tried to ignore it. I couldn't afford to lose my job, to let anyone know I was losing my mind. But every day it got worse. The room shifted when I wasn't looking. Hallways got narrower. The angles of the doors became impossibly sharp. The windows looked into different spaces, into places I didn't recognize. And the students started whispering behind my back. Then one day, I caught that same quiet girl standing near the back of the classroom, staring at the door. She wasn't looking at me. She was looking at the door like it had suddenly grown eyes. "Professor," she said slowly, "are you sure this is our classroom?" I went over to the door, and for the first time, I realized something that made my stomach drop. The door had no number on it, no label, no room 202. That's when I lost it. I can't explain what happened next, but I know it felt like my mind was unraveling, like something inside me snapped. I tried to leave the building, but the stairwell seemed endless. It looped back on itself, like a bad dream I couldn't escape. The doors refused to open. I felt like I was trapped in a nightmare with no way out. It's been a week since then, and I'm still here, still teaching. The students are still taking their same seats, their faces blurring together. They sit, they listen, they ask questions, but I can't shake the feeling that everything is wrong. That the classroom isn't where it should be. And now I'm afraid to leave. Because when I walk out, I'm terrified nothing will ever be where it should be again.
Story 2.
Jack's been my neighbor for 10 years. Vietnam broke him. Isolation finished the job. I stop by now, and then just to make sure he hasn't rotted into the carpet. I know what stress looks like. I've seen people unravel. I've seen dementia hollow out their eyes until nothing's left but blinking. But whatever's inside Jack now, it's not forgetting. It's pretending. Pretending to be Jack. And it's doing a damn bad job of it. He doesn't have much family. He should be living in a care facility, but no relatives are there to push him in that direction. Just me, pretty much. I knocked on his door. While I waited and looked around, I made a mental note to come back and trim his grass. Long strands of green weed swayed like a field of dancers in the wind. The door opened, and I had to stop myself from wincing. He looked bad compared to the last time I saw him. "Richard," he said, more as a fact than a greeting. "I thought I'd bring you some groceries." He eyed me up and down, stared at the plastic grocery bags in my hand, then opened the door the rest of the way. Jack isn't the warmest of folks, as you can probably surmise. His time in Vietnam sure did a number on him, and the sheer isolation he faced afterward had finished him off. But he reminded me of my wicked old grandpa before he passed away, and I had a bit of a soft spot for the old liver-spotted bastard. He glided faster than usual across the floor, dragging behind a length of blankets like a king's cloak. I couldn't hear the thump of his feet. It struck me as exceedingly odd. Jack's slippers tended to smack the floor pretty loud with each step. His home smelled like dust warmed by sunlight, like the aged ink and brittle paper smell of an old newspaper. Fly traps hung like orange tongues from the ceiling. Some still had a few prisoners buzzing around inside them. The visible cracks of his windows had a yellow tint to them. The windows peered through gaps in the curtains, which were drawn long against the intruding sun. Jack motioned for me to sit down at the dinner table as he rifled through the 2 white plastic bags I brought him. He seemed more disinterested than usual, somehow less chatty. "Everything okay, Jack?" I asked. He shot me a glance that said, "Why don't you leave me alone to die in peace? Nurse stopped coming by for some reason a couple days back. Now I just got to get rid of you and the Meals on Wheels fella." I cracked a smirk, but his mouth remained firm in place like cut marble on a statue. His left eye drooped more than usual. The skin on his face didn't seem to sit quite right. "Did you have a stroke, Jack? Are you feeling okay?" Jack smushed the left side of his face back into place like it was putty. It sent a trilling alarm ringing in the back of my mind. Stop a skin, so many damn questions. "I'm Euphina. Want a coffee?" Jack had never offered me a coffee before. He peered at me now. The left eye he had slid up into position locked in the upper left corner of his eye. Like he was a chameleon, one eye watching me, the other watching the ceiling. I got up, pretending to check my watch, unmanned by the sight of him, feeling something deeply wrong about the situation. I gotta go. Nice catching up with you. I turned to leave, sliding my chair back into its place at the dining table. Sure you don't want a sip of tea? He asked. When I met his gaze again, at least the one functional eyes gaze, I saw that his mouth was molded into a smile now. The teeth worked beneath like a llama chewing cud. His lips folded out, all wrong. You said coffee before, not tea. He nodded vigorously, his head wobbling back and forth like a bobblehead. That's what I meant. Coffee. He clicked his teeth, chewing the air. Ko-fhh. I moved past him and started toward the door. I saw that it wasn't just the blanket wrapped around him. There was a strange trail of them stretched across the floor. I spotted a large tube-like protrusion lying in the center of the path of blankets on the floor. I traced its path down toward the open basement door. My oxygen tubes, Jack said, flicking his head back, so he moved something beneath the trail of blankets. Oxygen tubes? Whatever was beneath those blankets had to be as thick as my torso, much longer too. The hairs on my neck crept up. I flicked open the front door. See you later, Jack. I gotta get home to Nancy. She's on dinner tonight. No reply came from behind me. As I moved to close the door, I saw Jack standing in the hallway threshold beneath the curved doorway banister. His head was cocked, his eyes like two dark sunflower seeds, both centered on me. His arms were hung loose at his hips, his back slightly arched. He was silent except for the sound of his breath echoing like the rattle of a mixing pea inside a spray paint can. His chest moved in and out slowly, grinding with each exhale. I closed the door behind me. My breath caught in my chest like a fish writhing in a net. Should I have called the cops? What would I even say? Help me, my neighbor's acting odd? Doesn't exactly scream emergency. I thought maybe it was a stroke at first, but then he rearranged his face. Pretty sure stroke victims aren't capable of that. And what about the blankets leading down to his basement? That cylindrical shape running beneath it. I wanted to get my wife's opinion before I did anything. I was lucky and happened to marry a woman much smarter than me. She always knew what to do. So I marched back home and waited until dinner was over and the kids were in bed to mention it to her. We were snuggled up in bed, her night dress on, the windows open to let the heat in when I broached the subject. Honey, I saw something off today. When I stopped by Jack's house, she flipped around to face me. I could see the sharp, angular grooves of her chin in the dark. Did he finally kick the bucket? I saw a cheeky grin rising on her lips. I couldn't help but grin too. I couldn't ever help it when I was looking into her eyes. No, he's alive, I paused. I think. You think? What the hell does that mean? The smile on her lips faltered. I explained to her how he seemed to glide across the floor, how he dragged a string of blankets behind him. I explained his mannerisms, the sagging face, the way he stood in the threshold of the door. I felt her soft hand glide against my wrist, and she tucked her fingers into my palm. She squeezed slightly. I can tell you aren't joking, she said. But what you were saying is also bat's hit insane. So you don't believe me? I said, peering into her eyes. The warmth of her body pressed against me. I didn't say that, she affirmed. It's just bizarre. We'll stop by tomorrow evening together. No. I don't want you anywhere near that place until I figure out what's wrong. You shouldn't have told me about it then, she said, pressing her forehead into mine. I'm sure as hell not going to let you wander into some oozing zombie's house without me there to protect you. Her grin grew larger. Okay, but you stay near the door. We aren't going to go inside, I said firmly. Nancy's mind is very literal and mechanical. She needs to chew on data and facts before she can really sink her teeth into a concept. But beneath that, she never doubted me. She just needed to confirm things for herself. That's what makes her so damn smart. I fell into a quiet sleep and awoke the next morning, readied myself for work, and spent the day in the office. Between sips of black coffee and Excel spreadsheets, my thoughts drifted back to Jack, to the misaligned, drooping curve of his chin, and the way his body glided across the floor. Full body shivers erupted for me, like I just slipped out of a freezing pool. The time came when I packed up my things from the office into my briefcase and drove home. It was about 6 p.m. My wife was home a couple of hours before me. She'd sent the kids to a babysitter for the evening. She prepared a lasagna to bring over to Jack's. It was her way of building a valid excuse to go over and see the cranky old bastard. Personally, I'd have just marched over there, but she'd already cooked it. We walked over, for houses down. A dog barked in the distance. The wind whistled through the leaves of a large oak in his yard. A car I didn't recognize sat parked out front. It appeared I'd missed it the day before when I'd stopped by. There was an atmosphere of unease around his home. I assumed it was just in me, but I saw the look on Nancy's face and immediately knew it wasn't. She held the lasagna with one hand and slid the other around my wrist. I rang the doorbell. Minutes of silence passed. I peered in through a window, but the curtains had been drawn tight. We turned to walk away when the door flicked open. I peered my head inside. I opened my mouth to say something, but it died in my throat when I saw an empty living room. Somewhere deep in its wooden bones, the house groaned. "Stay out here, please," I asked her, and she gave me a raised eyebrow in response. "I'm not letting you go in there by yourself," she said sternly. "Please, something's wrong here. I mean really wrong. I don't feel good about this." She felt the heat from my gaze now, the seriousness in my voice. "Okay, fine. I'll stay out here." She gave in, a little at first, then all at once with a shake of her head. "If I hear so much as a squeal from you, I'm calling the cops," she said, wagging a finger in my face. I planted a kiss on her forehead and wandered inside. I noticed she kept it propped open with the heel of her foot behind me. The house smelled more humid than it had yesterday. Like a film of pungent, musty residue clung to my skin as I crossed further inside. Like I was a curious little fish wandering into a much larger catfish's gaping mouth. I saw the blankets now, scattered about in heaps, mixed with spread-out towels and sheets, encompassing the entire first floor. It was bizarre. Perhaps Parkinson's? Dementia? Alzheimer's? I crossed past the basement door, and I nearly tripped over a large vertical lump beneath the ocean of fabric blocking the narrow corridor between the living room and kitchen. I saw that the lump subtly moved beneath the fabric. I saw that it extended far out of the basement door. I turned to rush back, and Jack was immediately to my left, filling a vacancy leading past the dining room and into the hall leading to Jack's bedroom. The crunching of sticky lungs exhaling, the sensation of hot breath on the right side of my neck. Jack was inches away. His body rattled slightly like a shaking hand. I flicked my glance over. Jack's head was a puffy ruin, sagging flesh like someone pressed two eyes into a ball of dough. His clothes hung wrong on his body. One arm was much shorter than the other. Jack was enrobed in blankets like a cocoon. He lifted a drooping hand and pointed toward the basement. He lifted the other, and with unsteady fingers, he tore apart fleshy seams where his lips melded together, revealing his sunken teeth. "Co, shh, madame." His teeth clicked like he was chewing on the words. Bass click meant. He was moving closer now. I watched a trickle of blood run down his folded cheek from the two bleeding sections where he'd pried his lips apart. I thought I heard the ever so slightest hint of a female scream. I twisted my head toward the basement door. "Richard," Nancy called from the front door. "Everything okay in there?" Jack cracked his neck in Nancy's direction. I heard a series of 3 shuddering pops reverberate from his vertebrae. His neck bulged with knobs of bone the size of golf balls. Psalm 10, I see the click of teeth. A predatory sort of drag in his voice. His tiny marble eyes centered over my shoulder onto Nancy. I slid past him, taking advantage of the momentary pause. I caught a smell of mulch, rotting leaves, a compost pile. I also saw that Jack's skin was glistening slightly. Jack didn't move to intercept me, but I saw his drooping head peer from around the corner behind us. The mass beneath the blankets led to Jack, and it ruffled the edges of the blankets almost imperceptibly. Nancy set the lasagna inside the doorframe and pulled me outside. She took one last look at Jack and then closed the front door behind us. "What the fuck?" she asked, looking up into my eyes. "I mean, what the fuck? Is he having an allergic reaction? Do we call the cops?" I forcefully pulled her from the door. Noticing something red in her hand, I lifted up her wrist when we were halfway across the yard. "What is that?" I inquired, pointing toward the slipper, still shaken from seeing Jack's melting face. The way he peeled apart the flesh where his lips once were like he was shaping clay. Bleeding clay. It's a slipper. A woman's slipper. I eyed it with a hint of concern. Jack has lived alone for over 40 years. As we crossed the street, I recalled something he'd told me yesterday. Nurse stopped coming by for some reason a couple days back. Stopped coming by? I took the slipper from my wife's hand. I saw the way her fingers trembled. A woman's shoe. The nurse's shoe. And if she'd left her shoes there, was that her car out front? The blue Nissan sitting on the curb. I had no idea if it was her car, but I had to check. Before Nancy could utter another word, I pulled out my phone and called the police. I explained everything about the shoe. I explained in more nuanced terms about some of his odd behaviors, what I thought was a woman's scream, and the presence of that car out front. I watched from the window as a patrol car pulled into our cul-de-sac. They wheeled around and parked behind the blue Nissan. Two uniformed officers stepped out and wandered up to the door. They knocked, and several minutes passed with no response. The cops peered into each of the front windows covered by blinds, and then they shrugged. I watched the smaller officer lean in and huddle his hands around the lower right corner of the Nissan's windshield. He then recorded what I presume was the VIN number, and then they left. That was it. I thought about the nurse, about her being in there alone with whatever contorted things sat inside that home. And it was in that moment I knew I was going to do something stupid, something I couldn't even tell Nancy about. I knew she'd try to stop me. I was going to break into Jack's house, slip in through a back window, step in where the cops couldn't. But ever since I was a kid, I had a streak for standing up for the little guy, even when it led to me getting beaten up too on the school playground. Even in high school, I'd gotten suspended for fighting a senior bullying a kid with cerebral palsy. I gave that fucker a swollen lip for his trouble. And I imagined that poor nurse. What if she was alive? What if that's why that thing wearing his skin wanted me to go down there, to hide me away too, deep in the recesses of that dark basement? I waited until Nancy was asleep. I could almost hear the lecture she'd give me when I got back, about making stupid decisions, about doing things as a team. But I knew she'd either stop me or want to come along. In our marriage, it was understood that she was the wise decision maker, and I always listened to her advice. But I was the one who got shit done. If she was a ball-peen hammer, I was a sledgehammer. Somehow it worked. Yeah, I'd get an earful if this turned out to be nothing. I'd be embarrassed. She'd chew me a new one. But if I was right, if something truly fucked up was going on inside that home, I'll let her stop me, let that nurse suffer in that basement. I'd never swallow it down. And worse, if she came with me and something happened to her, that would somehow be worse. I kissed the back of her head, inhaled deeply at the scent of her shampoo, something light and fragrant like lavender, and I slipped quietly out of bed. I'd set a spare change of clothes in the guest bathroom. I gave her one last glimpse in the fractured darkness of my room before I closed the door, bracing it with my hand to muffle the click. I was always getting myself into trouble with this hero shit. I thought I'd left it behind when I nearly got arrested in a bar in college after breaking a pool stick on some pervert's back when I saw him grope a waitress. But here I was years later with a wife and kids, and I was getting up to my same tired sense of morality. I slipped outside as quiet as I could manage, trying to hide my footsteps from the quiet house. I remembered that scream in the basement. It sounded buried, layered beneath something, but I had heard it. I hadn't even mentioned it to Nancy until she overheard me say it to the police. But I'd heard it. I'd heard something. I slipped around the back of Jack's home, intending to break in through a window, but the back door was open, wide open. I started to feel the beat of my heart inside the pulse of my neck. I stepped forward, every part of me screaming not to. This was a trap, but Jack was an old man. I could fend him off. As I crept through the doorway into the kitchen, the basement door was close. I stepped over a blue throw blanket and a bunch pile of red towels. The house was silent as death. I saw in my mind's eye Jack tearing open his face to reveal a set of chewing teeth. The trails of blood down either side of his bulbous chin. Chills ran down my body. The lump in the floor was gone. That large one I'd seen trailing from Jack, not beneath the blankets anymore. The basement was dark. A smell, coppery and gritty like the fresh air after a hog is butchered and parceled out. The steps were covered in a layer of old bed sheets. I turned on my phone flashlight, bringing a faint glow to the darkness. It was crushing, pulverizing darkness creeping at the light's edges. The smell grew more intense. An earthy undertow, crumbling worm-filled soil dried in the sun, smushed between your fingers. I rounded the corner, and my heart dropped like a falling elevator until it came crashing down. My body racked with full-tilt chills, a pulsing, oscillating mass of pale human flesh, stretched across the room like a carpet, half buried in a mound of blankets. I saw one female, legs sticking out from beneath a shivering fold of flesh, prickled with hair like cilia. The underside was red, like the red spongy tissue beneath the scab. The rippling edge tasted the air like a sea slug browsing for food across the ocean floor. Eating, attached to it, was a red slipper, the partner to the one Nancy had found upstairs. The basement door slammed shut above me, above the flight of wooden stairs. I snapped my gaze away to see what had happened, and my eyes met the drooping form of Jack, hanging upside down from the ceiling above the stairs. A sagging flesh puppet, pressed against the door. I followed the writhing flesh of his body, encased in blankets and sheets, caked together in a hardened fluid turned to a protective layer. Like a caddis flea larva, a large fleshy appendage like an oversized feeding tube was suctioned to the ceiling of the stairway, encased partially in layers of cloth. Tendrils ran from it like roots, adhering to and stabbing into the drywall. My eyes traced it back down toward the writhing mass of flesh consuming the nurse. It had moved closer, inched closer. My face went cold. I could hear the sound of thousands of tiny prickles, cilia moving and writhing, pushing that creature toward me. Jack's uneven arms hung limply above, blocking my escape, his sagging head nearly touching the floor. This time, it invited. I peered around. The space in front of me was blocked by the twisted form of Jack's puppeteer. A small hallway shot down past the stairwell. Those sticky tendrils running along Jack's umbilical tube began leaching down from the ceiling, tasting the air, looking for me. I rushed down the narrow hallway, my head flushed with warmth, with panic. I threw myself into a closed door, and it rattled against its hinges. I peered behind me. The hallway was no more narrow than myself, and I saw the fleshy visage of Jack crowding the hallway. 100 thin, vein-prehensile limbs reached out toward me. I slammed my weight again. A meteor shower of pain bloomed in my vision. My vision wobbled. I turned, and Jack had somehow crossed half the distance. I could hear the click of teeth above the writhing sound of movement, like a horde of cockroaches behind a wall. It was deafening now, filling the darkness. I threw myself a final time and heard the hinges rattle. The lock buckled, and I fell through into some sort of office room. I knocked over stacks of newspaper, creating a sort of avalanche. I slammed the door shut behind me and twisted the lock. I tipped over the desk. I felt something pop on my shoulder. A blur of pain bloomed like a rosebud. The far window sat in a depressed window well, the only source of light in the room. I dropped my phone somewhere along the way. I stared at the door, watched it begin to shudder. Small pale tentacles began crawling beneath the gap. I heard burrowing to my right, something chewing into the wall. I threw open the window, clawed my way halfway out of the sill. Just as the door budged halfway open, I turned once more. I couldn't help but the horror. This couldn't have happened. It couldn't have been real. I told myself over and over again. I saw Jack's head pressing through the gap like silly putty. His bones popped to accommodate, leaving behind the shelled, crunchy armor of blankets. A snail breaking through its shell, unwilling to leave behind prey. His neck squeezed through. It was fleshy toothpaste pushing through a tube. Countless veined arms the size of a baby's wrist crept around the door's edges, pushing, clawing. The wood groaned. I heaved myself up and over the lip of the sill and ran. Heaved myself over the fence like I was a pole vaulter and charged my way back home. When I got home, I locked myself in the bathroom, threw myself on the tile. I sat there, running my hands through the creases in my hair. Nancy knocked on it, asked if I was okay. I lied to her, said I had a stomach bug. God, that hurts to say. I've never lied to her before. But God, what could I say? What could I do? She opened the door and tried to ask me more. She tried so hard, and I lied right in her face. But she's smarter than that. Always has been. She'll get it out of me one way or another. I called the police again. I tried to explain what happened. Part of me wonders if this was some sort of delusion. Was I going through an episode of stress-induced psychosis? What will the police find down there? I can't stop imagining the visage of Jack, the man I'd once known, squeezing through a gap in the partially opened door the size of my fist, unhinging his being, sliding apart his bones. And that wasn't even the worst part. It's the frown I saw carved deep in the groove of his mouth. The pleading look in those beady insect eyes. It was the way his mouth opened up right before I slipped through the window and said, "Please, help me," like there was a piece of him still left alive inside of that thing.
Story 3.
It wasn't the first time I had come home to a pool of freshly spilled blood. The fan was switched on, and the currents of wind blew ripples across the glistening red liquid. I sighed, shut my eyes for an instant, then stepped forward right onto the pool of blood. There was no splash, no sticky squish. I opened my eyes. The pool of blood was gone. I walked right to the kitchen and poured myself a cup of coffee. The pool of blood is pretty low on the list of horrific images I see in this apartment. I've seen severed limbs, a mutilated face with gaping, worm-infested eyes, a bunch of hair still attached to part of scalp. I'm not exactly used to all these images, but I'm learning to cope. The first time I saw one, though, I got the worst one, the face with the worms in the eye sockets. I screamed, turned to run, slammed into a wall, fell back dazed, turned my head to see the same face staring right at me an inch away from my own, screamed again, and passed out. The doctors said I was hallucinating from stress, mood-dependent psychosis, or something like that. I saw a psychiatrist, took a bunch of meds, then began to lie that I had stopped seeing the images. They were considering warding me or having me quit my job. In this day and age, quitting my job is not possible. Being warded? I hit on my already sad finances. I could move out, but finding a place with this rent price, at such a good location, so that I can save on travel expenses? No way. I mean, it might sound crazy, but I prefer dealing with the images, which at the end of the day can't physically harm me, or so I hope, than starving to death on the streets. I just ignore them these days. I used to take photos of the images, just to confirm they weren't really there. Not on our plane of existence, anyway. But now I just ignore them, walk right through them, and poof, they disappear. I'm thinking of hiring an exorcist, a priest, a monk, a witch, anyone who could possibly help. I bought second-hand religious ornaments and decorated the house with them. A cross here, a Buddha statue there, a Shiva painting at the door. The images still appear. I don't know if I can afford a proper exorcist / priest / monk / witch. The really good ones, based on reviews, are so expensive. And if I were to pay peanuts for a less legitimate one, I might as well save the peanuts for working towards being able to afford another place. They can get distracting. I'm just back from work, and I'm here typing away, try to ignore the torn-off arm dangling by my shoulder, draped over the back of my chair. I know it's not there, and I should no longer be bothered by it after months of seeing it around, but fuck, it moved. The fingers twitched. Fuck, I'm just gonna keep typing. Pretend I didn't see it. Something's on my left. Oh dear God. The face. But the eyes. The worm-clogged eyes. They're moving. Staring. Straight into the side of my face. Did you speak? Leo, it said. I think. I'm going to call the police. Very calmly. If you don't hear from me, if I don't post this, whoever sees this on my computer, please know something went wrong. That those things, they may not be as intangible as I thought. Well, here I am again. The police came. Found me hysterically swatting away at invisible things on my shoulder, screaming my head off, collapsed on the ground, bawling. I have scratches all over my arms and legs. My face too. I had apparently clawed myself bloody. I don't really remember what happened. The psych at the hospital said it's probably dissociation. A defense mechanism my brain clicked into gear. I remember the name Leo, though, even without reading what I had written before. I remember dialing the police, telling them to come right away, giving them my address, then something yanking my hair back hard. I heard a creak from my neck before I fell back. Then nothing. I'm okay, though. Nothing seriously hurt. I'm warded voluntarily, but they got me my laptop and other stuff I need. I'm a danger to myself. I attack myself, based on what the psych said. I'm under mild sedation, so I feel somewhat calmer, at least. I did a bunch of research on Leo. I called my landlady. Her voice cracked when I asked her about that name. She said Leo was the boyfriend of her previous long-term tenant, Sasha. Sasha had moved away abruptly, just upped and left. The landlady never got to say goodbye or talk to Sasha. She just received a text from her about her departure. The tenant had forfeited her deposit. She was in that much of a hurry to leave. The landlady had spoken to Leo, the boyfriend, when he came by to pack Sasha's stuff. He had told the landlady that Sasha had to move for work. I asked her more about Leo. The landlady said he seemed intense. Nervous, rather twitchy. She didn't like his energy. We were silent on the call for a long moment before she spoke again. I always wondered what really happened to Sasha. My tenant. I nodded. It was exactly what I was thinking too. Then I realized she couldn't see me and spoke. Yes, leaving so abruptly, giving up on the deposit. Did you ever hear about her since? No, never. The landlady didn't know much about Leo either. Just saw him once when she was over to supervise the fixing of the kitchen plumbing, and when he came over to pack up Sasha's things. Well, Leo was surprisingly easy to find. I typed in his name and Sasha's, the location of our town, and boom. Saw his account. It was private. I made a fake account with a really pretty girl as a profile picture and requested to follow him. He accepted my request soon enough. I wanted to deceive him. Build rapport over social media. Build a friendship/flirtatious thing for a while, then suss him out. But I was only going to be warded for 3 days. Maybe 7, if I intentionally failed the evaluation at the end of the 3 days. But then I would miss more work and I could get fired. I had to figure out what was going on in that apartment before I had to go back. I could just move out, yes. But I would lose my deposit if I didn't finish my lease. I would also be homeless. I don't think I can afford to stay anywhere in this city with my pay. This apartment was rented to me at a crazily low price. For good reason, I realized, but still. I need my job. It's my first job in a long time. My first permanent job, at least. The first one with any hint of a future and progression. But those grotesque things had graduated from mere images. They had come to life and hurt me. They could touch me, physically. I had to do something about it. So I sent Leo a message. I didn't have time to waste. What did you do to Sasha? I sent before I could second-guess myself. Who are you? His reply didn't take long at all. He must have been online. Tell me what you did to Sasha. I was blocked within the next minute. I pushed it too far. I kept searching, trying to figure out more. But there was little I could do from the ward. I was discharged when the 3 days were up. Once home, I braced myself to see the pool of blood, the severed limbs, the ghastly face. What I saw instead was a shadow. I saw it the minute I walked into the living room. Someone was hiding behind my couch. Their shadow spilled beyond it. I froze, and my breath caught in my throat. I took a step back, the cold of the tiles beneath my feet matching the cold in my bones. Another step back towards the door. My foot splashed into sticky liquid, and I slipped. My head hit something hard as I landed, and darkness tinged the edges of my vision. Then he was hovering over me. Thou! I could recognize him, even through my spotted vision and hazed mind. I tried to roll over, but pain bloomed in my head. Don't! I managed to gasp as he leaned down and grabbed hold of my ankles. I tried to struggle, but everything felt weak. Objects were swimming in and out of my vision. He dragged me into my bedroom, threw me into the closet, and pulled out a key. I didn't even know my closet had a key. Then he locked me in. Stay in there until I deal with her. You'll be safer inside. Did he say I'll be safer? Then the closet door rattled hard. Something was throwing itself at the door. The hinges creaked with each slam. Tears of horror sprang into my eyes. My heart pounded with each juddering thud. Leo was insane. I leaned forward, ignoring the crack of pain that burnt through my head. I looked through the slats. Bam! A pair of eyes smashed up against the closet door from the outside, glaring right into mine. Worms wriggled in the soft, squishy, rotten whites and browns within the sockets. I screamed and flung myself back, hitting my already sore and tender head once again. That thing snarled at me. Then I saw Leo leap forward, grab that thing by its hair, and yank it back. The same way it had yanked my hair. It snarled, spittle flicking through the slats and landing on my face. The stench that accompanied it flooded my nostrils. It was a mixture of acid and cloying sweetness, overpowering, inescapable. I swiped the slimy spit off frantically, gagging, vomit rising. I heard Leo chant several phrases in a strange language in a sonorous, commanding tone, then fling something at that thing, at that head. Then I saw it, severed arms creeping up behind him. "Behind you!" I yelled before I could stop myself, before I could wonder if Leo was on my side. Leo turned, leapt free of the arms that grabbed at his ankles. The fight went on for a long time, but those things in Leo were no longer within view from the slats. I sat still, listening to the sounds of a major scuffle. Thuds, snarls, shrieks, groans, crashing furniture. Then silence, save ragged breathing. Footsteps. I held my breath and shrank into a corner. The closet doors swung open. Leo, bloodied, bruised, but with a triumphant look in his eyes. My heart leapt with hope, then skipped a beat in fear. I wasn't sure what Leo was. He seemed to have wanted to keep me safe, but I had no idea what he truly wanted. Who he was. If he was good. Evil. She must have loosened the box, he said. She must have what? I asked, dazed. Sasha's mother. She must have loosened the box. Sasha's mother? Box. The landlady. You've met her? She's Sasha's mom. She's what? Leo told me the story then. How Sasha had died while they were dating. Sacrificed in a ritual by two crazy friends of hers. In the guise of a retreat, her two new friends from work had lured her into an isolated cabin in the woods. Killed her. The two friends had eventually died too, before the investigation could be completed. But Sasha had come back. Or something had. She came in the nights. Haunted Leo. It was then that he suspected Sasha, or the thing that she had become, had killed the murdering friends. Sasha's mother and him had worked together to trap Sasha. They had consulted some powerful shamans. The shaman's custom made him a box. A box meant to trap the entity that Sasha had become. Shamans. I mumbled, remembering my list of potential people to call. Monks, priests, witches. Why hadn't I thought of shamans? Not like I could have afforded them, anyway. They couldn't kill her straight out. She was too powerful. But she could be trapped within the box, sealed from the world. There, she would eventually weaken and die. But it seemed Sasha's mother couldn't bear it. Couldn't bear the thought of her daughter withering away in the box. He believed she had loosened it, just a little. How? Leo didn't say. He didn't know. She had loosened it enough for Sasha to feed. On unsuspecting new tenants. On me. Where's Sasha now? Back in a box. Under the bed. Under the fucking bed. She had been there the entire time. Her body. That thing. I had been sleeping right above that twisted demonic thing. I didn't let things slide. I confronted the landlady the next morning. About her lies. About how she tried to frame Leo. Tried to make me avoid him by painting him out to be a possible murderer. For trying to sacrifice me as food for her dead daughter monster. And that is how I now live rent-free in an apartment in the heart of the city. The images stopped. No more visions of blood, limbs, eyes full of worms. I have a free apartment to live in. All I have to pay is utilities. That's the deal I struck with the landlady. The box is kept safely sealed now. All I have to put up with are the sounds of scratching that come from beneath my bed. Late in the quiet of the night, I can hear them. When I lie awake at night, I sometimes think I feel worms crawling in my eyes. And at times, if I hold my breath, I can hear hers. But hey, beggars can't be choosers. http://reddit.com/r/theta-rkcs. That's it for today's creepy Reddit tales. Before we go, I just want to say a quick thanks to all of you for watching, liking, and sticking around. You guys keep this channel going, and I'll be back soon with more stories that'll make your skin crawl. Drop a comment if you've got your own spooky tale to share, and I'll see you in the next one.